Oh no. Nothing brings me out of trying to appear normal at work while in desperate need of some rest, like activating my Homestuck brain, and oh boy, did that damn demon show wench do just that. Vivziepop decided to make an animated adaptation of Homestuck, with creator Andrew Hussie being in the writing seat and the animation being handled by Spindlehorse's Australian division. And as of typing up this very lucid, not really organized and polished script, the first trailer for a pilot is out. Knowing how much I enjoyed this comic and talk people's ears off about it, this should be a slam dunk for me, but that opening gag isn't me being funny. I'm anxious about this thing, and not in a positive way, and I figured I should at least get my thoughts out there while it's still hot off the press. How well those thoughts and sentiments age will be determined later. First, I need to say something to this trailer's credit because, contrary to popular belief, I'm not a bitter slag, and I do like things. The animation is par for the course for Vivzie's racket, fluid as fuck and exploding with style. The art direction is very faithful to Homestuck, especially toward the end of its main run and its extensions like Beyond Canon and High Swap. Like, imagine the Descend sequence, or Make Her Pay, or Unite synchronization brought to life like this. It would be absolute eye candy. Toby Fox sounds good as John. The arrangement of Showtime in the trailer is bombastic and hype. I could say more on the sound department later. At a glance, the presentation gives a decent first impression, and for plenty of Homestucks, is enough to have them sold on the project. That said, now to get into why I'm more terrified than excited for this. The first sign of worry is that while Andrew Hussie is going to be in the main writer position, Vivzie herself is going to be an executive producer on the project, which kind of makes sense. She'd want to be involved because she had a Homestuck phase and still enjoys the comic. Why this is such a concern is that for as much credit as I can give her for creating two smash hit shows that her team worked on diligently for the better part of a decade, the fandom and hate-dom surrounding Hell's Scandalous Showman and Has-Been Hotel have created a media discussion environment so radioactively toxic so quickly that it gave the Sonic and Rick and Morty fandoms a collective seizure. You've heard it all at this point. Her work is stuffed with obnoxiously excessive swearing and allusions to bucketfuls of naughty bedroom activities. The world building is great on the surface until it actually has to hold water as more story comes out. She's as edgy as Slaughter Race in that cringe Wreck-It Ralph fanfiction Disney made. Any character she and the crew get attached to will have the entire story twisted and retconned to put them in the best light possible, even if they're the least deserving of being coddled, and she simply cannot help herself from becoming her own show's biggest stan. Now, some of you intellectuals will point out that a writer and an executive producer are not the same position, and that Viv is merely providing the resources for Hussie to do this. Know what? That's true. However, it's still having her attached to the project that has everyone worried, and with her track record of not being the most transparent and honest about what she's up to, there's the possibility her involvement goes deeper. There's a few micro examples of how deep her involvement could truly go in the trailer footage, so hold on to this for a beat. And yeah, another sentiment I have to agree with is that of all the indie studios that the project could go with, many pointed out Glitch would have been a fantastic fit given the video game aesthetics, the Homestuck team had to go with the one who's burnt through what little goodwill she's got left like that. Even if Viv isn't in the writing seat, I think Homestucks would agree that having the Huss in that position is a source of concern itself because, oh boy, the many controversies they've gotten themselves into just during the comic's lifetime. If Vivzie is the side of the creator coin that caters to the most rabid fans' whims, story and fandom goodwill be damned, Andrew Hussie is the opposite side of that coin that trolls the living daylights out of the fans. Story and fandom goodwill be damned. Don't get me wrong, the first half of the entire comic, for all its issues, was absolutely brilliant, fitting together like a laser-cut puzzle with every character interaction and timeline crossing every T and dotting every I. But let's be real, Act 5.2, or Murderstuck, was a never-ending conga of, wow, that just happened. Because Hussie couldn't figure out how to give the underdeveloped half of the troll team compelling arcs, so why not kill them off instead? Because that's far easier, and they were joke characters anyway, right? I'm still upset about this, by the way! Also, the entire fustercluck of bloat that Act 6 ended up being and not mattering in the long run. Hussie either gives us the best piece of writing that ever existed or the most aggravating waste of time ever read. There's barely an in-between. Oh, and Homestuck veterans may remember the absolute fiasco that was the Homestuck game Kickstarter, and that HiveBit ended up coming out of the funding instead. Sarah Z made an entire fucking documentary about this fandom and comic and got slapped with a cease and desist that she talked about for another hour and a half. Yeah, Vivian crashing out like a toddler over jokes about her formula and have nothing on the Huss. Even if it's just Hussie directly adapting the comic one for one into a screenplay and cutting down on the production time because the material is already there to work with, one terrifies me because of how they wrote the source material, the other terrifies me because of how they could handle the executive side based on their own projects. Speaking of execution, some of the character interactions in this trailer give off some red flags on how this could turn out. Most notably, Dave. This quick visual gag of him grabbing John to make him look at an incoming meteor, while funny, is one of the most un-Dave things I've ever seen. Dave Strider is one of the chillest and least aggressive characters in this entire franchise, so seeing him do a thing that's more characteristic of someone like Dirk doesn't inspire much trust in me. We also get to preview how Rose sounds, which, if they were going for vibes like Raven of the OG Teen Titans, OG referring to the 2000s Cartoon Network show, since that's the version my generation's most familiar with, I wouldn't mind, but given that Luna exists, I'm expecting Rose to be a passive-aggressive bitch tsundere instead of a mysterious therapist grappling with her own misguided mommy issues. Karkat and Jade were briefly showcased with no voiceover to fully gauge how spot on they'll be, and John is so far the one character I think might be kept on track thanks to Toby Fox being a regular contributor to Homestuck. From music to, I believe, some work on John's walk-around game sections. Visually, this looks really promising, but this first battle with John's dad and all the cakes is too over-the-top shonen fight for my liking. The source material kept it simple while still being able to sell it as epic and goofy at the same time. And anyone who knows me well knows that one of my concerns for even further down the line is how the Meow Rails will be handled, because I unapologetically adore Equius, flaws and all, and his friendship with Nepeta is just the sweetest dynamic in the troll group. There's a lot more on the character dynamics, and particularly the voice acting, that I may have to wait on until the fall pilot is out on. The Showtime remix is pretty good, and it makes me wonder if Toby Fox and other Homestuck soundtrack veterans like Clark Powell, Michael Guy Bowman, and James Roach will be returning to compose the score, including new renditions of signature songs like Suburban Jungle, Upward Movement, and the mimetically popular Megalovania. I guess we'll have to wait and see. The biggest linchpin in this project, though, is just the mere format the comic exists in. Homestuck, with its nearly 9,000 page count, novels worth of text message logs, anthologies worth of panels, not including GIF images, hours of animations and playable walk-around sections, early high interactivity with the fan base, and even story beats and characters being inspired by the massive fan base, was built to take every advantage of being something really only able to exist on the internet. How the hell do you even adapt that to another medium like film or television? Well, Project Soundpage before this certainly decided to give it a shot with a team of hobbyists, and it's still undergoing production. The only thing I can say to a production team with a budget and higher echelons of organization than that is, good luck. You'll need it. Overall, I'm not exactly looking forward to the full release. For every positive I found that mildly assuages my fears or looks promising, there's another piece of this machine that has me apprehensive to it, and being handled by Vivziepop in some capacity has me utterly terrified for the kind of nuclear explosion awaiting the internet. I'll still at least check out the pilot when it comes out, and I'm more than happy to have my mind changed. In fact, I highly encourage it, but I hesitate to proceed with anything but caution on something helmed by a team-up of a comic author who's an expert at killing characters, and an indie animator who's an expert at killing a project's promise and audience goodwill. Might as well start preparing for the new generation's first taste of the kind of website crashes the Homestuck veterans were responsible for back in the day. That's a wrap. Make sure to pay tribute to the algorithm gods with a like, share, and comment. Subscribe and turn on the notifications because my upload schedule would make the various hiatuses during Act 6's active run blush. Join the servers if you want me to tell you about Homestuck, and you can get all sorts of Homestuck art and trinkets while supporting the channel at the official Magma Paint Production store. Check out all the links. I'm going to bug Invader Zim at Cheyenne Anime Con while cosplaying as Dirk Strider. Goodbye!